Welcome back to the Fanspeak Network and another episode of Sibling Showdown. And this is our weekly strategy session. I'm Meg. You can follow me at Megs08DFS. And I'm, of course, joined by my sibling, my brother, Steve. You can follow him at steveospiralsspeak. Steve, I love doing live drafts with you each and every week. We do them Wednesdays, of course, here on the Fanspeak Network, live BBM draft. But I also love talking each and every week about different strategies and things that we need to lean into during these live drafts. So are you ready to talk a little best ball strategy, and how are you doing this week?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all about finding the right strategy and definitely a particular strategy for a certain draft. And, that's the, kind of the edge you can get over the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And, certainly some of these strategy shows are going to be more kind of player or team take focus, like today's. I won't tell you yet, but like today's episode, and we're going to be more really leading into certain types of best ball strategies, whether it's the build structure, or there's a gazillion different best ball strategies that we could talk about and that we will talk about. So whether it's actual like kind of the building of the team or the player takes, all sorts of strategy angles that we are going to take a look at here on our weekly strategy session. And so this is our weekly strategy session. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the Fanspeak Network. We do 4 to 5 live drafts every single week. And of course, more strategy shows coming from us, from Justin and Andrew, some shorts, all sorts of good stuff. And of course, check out our all free content on fanspeak.com. Today, Steve, we are talking about the top 10 teams we want to stack up in best ball this 2024 best ball season, and at different price points, right? Because of course, everybody wants to stack, the 49ers and the Chiefs and the Lions and every single top 10 team, right?
Yeah.
But you have to look at it from different price points. And there's a lot of those teams I just mentioned are going to be in this list, but there's going to be other ones too at different price points that you can get throughout the draft. Last year, if you look at the teams that were successful, some of the expensive ones were like the 49ers. Some of the mid-price ones were like the Dolphins or the Cowboys. Some of the cheaper ones, value ones, were the Texans or the Packers. So you do kind of want to be getting access to different teams at different prices. So give me your thoughts on that, and then we'll kind of dive more into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, you of course want to target all the top 10 offenses, but some are easier to stack than others. Some are so condensed, which is great. But if they're all condensed and they all go in the top 5 rounds, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get, and it's really hard to make those stacks unique because you're going to be pairing them, similarly. You're only going to get the same types of guys every time. But it is about balancing and finding, also offenses that either just miss the top 10 but are still very good and have a lot of top end fantasy guys, or guys who are teams that are, maybe don't project right now as top 10, but have the chance if everything breaks the way, guys develop, they stay healthier this year, etc. So it's finding those situations where it could be a combo of things: coaching changes, new additions, development of key guys, health of key guys. So that can obviously go a long way to helping an offense make a big jump in a given year.
Yeah, and we talk a lot on our live drafts and on these strategy shows, and our strategy shows last year, which we talked about, which we had a lot of success with, stacking up team correlations at different positions, not just trying to stack a quarterback and 2 receivers, like being willing to stack a team, whether it's with or without the quarterback, whether you get a running back and a receiver, or you are able to stack the quarterback and it's a quarterback receiver tight end, or a quarterback running back receiver tight end. Like, you're just being willing to team correlate and wanting to team correlate, especially with good offenses, has kind of like been one of our biggest stands, one of our biggest focuses. And that's why we wanted to lean into this today. I wrote an article about the top 10 teams, again, at different price points. And I'm going to bring it over now, Steve, and I'll show you kind of the research I put into it as far as what I looked at. So what I looked at, the factors that I looked at, let me see if I can make this a little bit larger here. I don't know if you can read that a little bit better, but what I looked at was last year's total offense results via Pro Football Reference. the projected total points. Connor Allen from 4for4 Football Minute did a great tweet thread a week or two ago about the projected points, the look ahead totals, and the projected points for all 32 teams. Of course, the best ball playoff schedule, which we have covered. I have multiple charts on. Be sure to check out our best ball tab. That's our headquarters, and I have it broken out into different hubs. I have a playoff hub, so I have charts there of which playoff schedules I like. Coaching and personnel changes. Steve spoke to this. It's key. We did a whole show. One of our strategy sessions was a show about offensive coordinator changes. That's huge. There are 13 offensive coordinator changes that we were looking at, 5 that Steve liked the most, but a lot that we want to target. Check out that show. But I weighed that in, or personnel changes. Obviously, when a Kirk Cousins goes over to the Atlanta Falcons, that's a massive change. And then the draft capital. What's it going to cost to get 2 to 4 players from a team? So as I mentioned, Connor Allen, did this tweet. About a little over a week ago about the sportsbook totals. So be sure to check that out. And this was the projected points. And as you can see, no surprise here, right? I mean, the total projected points for the season, the top 10 teams are the 49ers, the Lions, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Cowboys, the Texans, and the Packers. No real big surprises. And then just outside of that, you have like Philly, the Rams, Atlanta, Jets, again, with the massive upgrades. They have Jacksonville rounding out the top 15. Again, nobody's surprised about those. And of course, you're going to get, if you're doing a ton of best ball volume, you're going to get access to most team stacks. But this is who you want to lean into the most, which teams you want to stack up the most. And really, I want access to really all 15 of these. But now we kind of broke it out by different price points. So let's look at, Steve, we're going to go team by team and I'll talk about why I liked it, and then you could talk about why you like it. So, of course, number one, we're looking at the expensive stacks. And number one is 49ers. They have the highest projected points for 2024. They had the third most points in 2023. They're running it back. I mean, I know we have these IA groomers, but they're running it back with the same coaches. And I know there was some coordinator changes of guys like, what was it? Kubiak went to the Saints, but generally speaking, from the top, you have
it's Kyle Shanahan show.
This is the Kyle Shanahan show. Thank you. Same personnel and coaching essentially, and just an elite best ball playoff schedule. Again, check out our charts on the best ball playoff hub, where on the charts you'll see all their playoff games, weeks 15 through 17, are indoors in California, all high projected point totals for those games. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer. I'm absolutely obsessed with the 49ers at every level. I'm sure there's nothing a ton more that you have to add, but give me your thoughts on why you're hammering the 49ers as well.
Yeah, I mean, truly the only knock on them that one would point to is their lack of play volume. Their low pass attempts. But part of that was they just were so efficient with what they did do.
Right.
Guess what? If Debo and them were not breaking 50, 60-yard touchdowns, they'll just have to throw more. And these guys will still be open because they're always open. They're so good. And the reason I would say to even have a higher outlook is Purdy is not coming back from a major elbow surgery. He looked fully healthy, but he looked better down the stretch. His first couple of games, people were like, "Oh, he's not throwing the ball past 20 yards." Well, that started to change some. He's still not throwing it. He's not checking it deep like some of the bigger arms in the league. But he was much better down the stretch, obviously, into the playoffs. And then the other thing is, Ayuk missed a game, Kittle missed a game, Debo missed 3 games. What if they are healthier? And Juwan Jennings, their number 3 receiver, missed a lot of time last year. He's back. They drafted Ricky Parasol, so they're just built deeper. They drafted another running back in case McCaffrey misses anything. They are just deeper than they were.
Themselves that they're never going to be thin, even if they do have injuries. I mean, the Parasol thing was like the big. They used first round capital on him. They're just assuring themselves that they will miss no beats if they have to have a next man up situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So you're kind of in agreement that is the premier stack that you obviously want to get. While it's expensive, you love it.
Yeah, and while the weapons are expensive, and I think people will make the case for Parasol, but outside of the top 4, it's unlikely anyone really has any fantasy value. The good news is Purdy is very affordable, so you can pick what maybe get one or two of those four key weapons, McCaffrey, Samuel, Ayuk, Kittle. You grab one or two of those, and then you grab Purdy later. So it's still not over the top crazy expensive.
Absolutely. That's another reason I love it so much. But I still include expensive stacks, but that's a great point about Purdy. Okay, so number 2 is the Detroit Lions, really for the similar reasons. Of course, you have the second highest projected point total for 2024, had the 5th most points in 2023. Same personnel and coaches. We know the offensive coordinator, there's a lot of talk about potentially coming to Washington to be a head coach. He stayed put. He's going to be the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, again. And then you have a potential breakout year for Jameson Williams, who's still fairly priced. His price has risen since the start of BBM, but it still is fairly priced in the 80s or 90s, going in the 80s or 90s typically. Should be that wide receiver too now. And outside of week 16 in Chicago, week 15 and week 17 are absolutely awesome spots for the Lions. So if you can find a good week 16 team to pair them up with while they're outdoors in Chicago, and I know Goff gets always a knock on that narrative, 15 and 17 are awesome. So pair them with the right team or two and you'll be just fine. Speaking of, I wrote an article again right here on fanspeak.com. Check it out. All articles are free. And it was teams that pair well together. So Lions are a perfect example. They pair well with teams that don't have a week 5 bye like themselves, but do have a good week 15 and 17 schedule. So be sure to check that out on Fanspeak as well. So yeah, thoughts on the Lions, Steve? I mean, this is another kind of no-brainer.
The Lions, they lost one of their best offensive linemen in free agency, but they replaced him right away with the guy from the Ravens. And then, like you said, Jameson Williams now fully back, not suspended. And, they lost Josh Reynolds, who was a good piece of this offense, but they, retained Khalif Raymond. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones there. Obviously they have the running backs. They have Laporta. They just have so many weapons, and those running backs missed time last year. Gibbs missed 1 or 2 games. Montgomery missed 3 games. If they're healthier, that offense is even better and stronger. And again, Gibbs and Laporta were rookies. Jameson Williams was essentially a rookie because of his last year as being injured as a rookie. So these guys are all now potentially way better, or at least more consistent. So we could be wheels up for this team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, ironically, the one that I'm getting the least access to is Laporta, who I had the most access to last year. 50%. That was our biggest stand from the very start of BBM 4. We were all over Laporta, talked about it all summer long. We both had over 50% exposure. And this year, price matters. And I just can't pay that high of a cost, or I rarely pay that high of a cost. But the other ones, I have, I'm very interested in Lions access with or without Goff. And let me make that clear, because I'm totally fine getting I'm just making this up, like a David Montgomery, Jameson Williams or something like that, or an Amon-Ra. You couldn't get Amon-Ra Gibbs, but like Amon-Ra, David Montgomery, something like that. Even if you don't get Goff, I'm totally fine with that. So kind of getting one early and one mid rounds or something. So third one is no surprise. Kansas City Chiefs have the 3rd highest projected points in 2024. And this is a personnel thing here. They added Marquise Brown, free agency, Xavier Worthy, the NFL draft, to obviously Mahomes, Kelsey, and Isaiah Pacheco. We saw that what the offense, looked like with, last year was a down year for them, basically. It was basically even a down year for Kelsey. But Isaiah Pacheco looked very strong as like a feature, just volume, running back. I love Pacheco in that 5th round range. I think he's going this year. But I love Mahomes stacks too. I love the additions of Brown and Worthy. I've kind of haven't touched Rice much, just with the whole potential looming suspensions. I know some people are a little less risk tolerant to that and willing to take shots. I guess because the receiver room's a little more crowded. That's why I'm not drafting them a ton, and maybe I will more as the summer goes on. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Chiefs and how are you handling their stacks?
Yeah, no, I think people are overly down on the Chiefs still, and also I think people are just assuming that Rice is the best value here. I think Marquise
I like
Brown,
Marquise Brown the best, yeah.
and Xavier Worthy, I think, are much better. When three receivers are playing, I think Rice could have end up with a very minor role in this team, relatively
Really?
speaking. Like, not when I say minor, I don't mean like 2 targets a game, but I mean like well
comparatively
below,
to last year.
comparatively last year, and even comparatively to where he's going in fantasy drafts.
Sure.
So, Marquise Brown, people forget that, with Lamar, I think it's 2021, the first year kind of Lamar got that injury at the end of the year. Before Lamar got hurt, Marquise Brown was top 10 receiver. And then Lamar got hurt and Tyler Huntley just couldn't throw the ball deep anymore. Guess who does throw the ball deep? Patrick Mahomes. It was just last year, Justin Watson and MVS could not catch the ball. Marquise Brown can. And when Kyler was healthy, he had some good games these past couple of years. Unfortunately, they both had their own injuries and just couldn't, be healthy a lot at the same time together. And then Xavier Worthy is just, so much electric speed. And if there's a coach that knows how to deal with that, it's Andy Reid, Sean Jackson, Tyreek Hill. He knows how to deal with speed. So yeah, I just love that. And then, people are so down on Travis Kelce, and I understand his down year. But what people fail to understand, he finished as tight end, through week 17, because he didn't play week 18, and a number of stars didn't play week 18. Through week 17, he finished as tight end 2. And that's in both points per game and in total points in half-point PPR. And people are saying he had a down year.
Well, he was a massive failure for a first-round pick last year.
He was a failure for a first-round pick, but you're not taking him in the first round.
He's what, third or fourth round this year, I guess?
4th, 5th round, yeah. Last
year.
Oh,
that's right. He goes high. I was watching Spread's DraftKings draft yesterday. He goes high. He goes higher in DraftKings than he does on Underdog. Yeah. Understandably so, with the full point PPR and the bonuses. So
but last year in half point PPR through 17 weeks, Sam Laporta averaged 11.6 points per game. Travis Kelce averaged 11.5. So you're essentially the same guy. And again, he was dealt with an injury to start the year. The offense was way more inefficient because they had few weapons. Now they have more weapons. They're just going to score more touchdowns. Guess who gets those touchdowns? It's going to be Travis Kelce. Mahomes had the lowest touchdown rate of his career, like by far.
Yeah.
The odds of that happening twice in a row, I would not bet that. So yeah, I just love this. I think Pacheco, we've seen he can be a pretty good feature back as well. So yeah, I think his offense is really good.
I will say when they get in close, like, they're not shy about being a little run heavy there with Pacheco, and that's why I like him so much. But I still like Mahomes stacks. I think I'm a little less high on Kelce than you. I love Mahomes stacks the best with Marquise Brown, and I'm willing to do Marquise Brown Worthy. I like that. I haven't touched Rice much. I have a little Kelce, and I have a lot of Marquise Brown and some Worthy. I'd say that's how I like, and I have a good bit of Pacheco. So I'd say my favorite of the Chiefs, whether again with or without the quarterback, are Pacheco, Marquise Brown. But I'm going to get exposure to all, and of course, I definitely want kind of different versions of the Mahomes stack, right? Whether it's Mahomes Kelce, somebody else, Mahomes Brown, somebody else. I just want different versions of Mahomes stack because I certainly like the Mahomes stack a lot better this year. And again, this was a stack you had to pay second round capital for last year. And this year you're getting Mahomes in the 5th round, so, yeah. So that's all, it's context to everything. So yeah, love the Chiefs as a stack. One thing I'll point out, as you can see on screen right now, very clean screen, no ads. All our articles on fanspeak.com are free. If you don't want ads, like you're seeing this screen right now, you could subscribe to Ultimate GM. It's on the homepage. Click the Ultimate GM. You can subscribe. It does have other benefits throughout the whole entire year, but you get no ads, way to support the channel and fanspeak.com. But also we are going to be putting some best ball features behind the Ultimate GM paywall for July and August. So just wanted to point that out. And it's a $19.95 for a whole entire year. So whenever you get it, it would go through till, if you got it today, you'd get it for an access for a whole entire year till next June 19th. So something to consider there while you see this clean, beautiful screen without ads. Anyways, we'll go to number 4. Our last one of the expensive stacks is the Miami Dolphins. Of course, they're 4 because they're the 4th highest projected points for 2024. They had the most yards in 2023, the 2nd most points in 2023. They have an amazing week 15, 16 game environment and projected total points. Now, week 17, they are in Cleveland with a lower point total. Listen, maybe the running backs can still get there. Maybe you just pair them with really good stacks of teams that have good week 15, 16, especially passing matchups. Again, look at my article on fanspeak.com about teams that pair well together. So again, it's expensive because Hill, Waddle, Chain are all drafted in rounds 1 through 3, but you have Mostert and Tua going in the 90s, Tua in the 118 to 120. And then you could get some of those tertiary pieces. Jalen Wright, who was just drafted later, obviously. Jonnu Smith, the tight end, very late. Obviously, the 3rd, 4th receivers, Beckham and the rookie very late. So I want a lot of exposure to the Dolphins yet again. Ironic, to nobody's surprise, the Dolphins have been on the BBM winner the last 2 years. I don't think that's a accident. This is under Mike McDaniel. This is just a high-powered offense and one that I want to make sure I have exposure to this year. So thoughts on the Dolphins, Steve?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, this Mike McDaniel gets the most out of this team. He's completely turned Tua from maybe a league average starter to a very good starter because he just has him trusting himself back to what we saw at Alabama, and with these 2 elite weapons, Tua and the team just really took off these past 2 years, especially Tyreek last season. Some of that was Waddle. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it a little bit more evened out between the 2. And what I do like is just from a team perspective in general, it might hurt the upside of Hill last year when he did have just a really elite season. He led in points per game. Lamb led in total fantasy points, but due to Hill missing a game, Hill led in points per game. Is the additions of Beckham, of Jonnu Smith, of Malik Washington, they're at least deeper. Last year they had nothing beyond those 2 receivers and the 2 running backs. Now they're deeper. They have the 3rd running back in Jalen Wright as well. I'm not as keen in drafting him because I think it's a chain and most are going to soak up almost all the usage, but at least they're deep in case any missed time. I mean, we saw a chain miss time last year. And Mostert has historically missed a considerable amount of time in his career. So it's good that this team is just deeper, similar to what we talked about the 49ers before.
Yeah.
Like if a piece goes missing for a couple of weeks, they're not going to be as much of a mess as they were last year. Like when Hill was out and banged up last year, boy, this team was much different.
Yeah. No, great point. They're like the 49ers, they refuse to be thin. How are you, last question with Dolphins before we move on, how are you handling, because I haven't, outside of Jonnu, I haven't really gotten the late guys. I think I've taken Beckham once, maybe Malik Washington once. I've taken Jonnu a few times. Where do you stand with the late Dolphins guys?
Yeah, I'm taking Jonnu and Beckham. I'm not really, I took Malik Washington a couple of times, like right after the draft, but that was before Beckham signed. Really, I'm not taking him now because I do think Beckham signed there for a reason. I also think, if you look at Odell Beckham, he finished 2nd on the Ravens in a number of passing categories. And this is an offense that's going to throw a lot more. Not that he's going to finish 2nd, but he could be a very respectable 3rd on this team and give you some, usable fantasy weeks for sure.
And you're getting him in the last round, basically.
Yeah, and again, another year removed from major surgery. Yes, he's older. Yes, this is not the Odell Beckham of 2014, 2015. Sure. But Mike McDaniel is known around the league. I mean, he's so good in so many areas. But you talk about receivers who've been with him, and to the man, they talk about every receiver. I mean, guys who've been in this league 10 plus years talk about how they learned something from Mike McDaniel. So yeah, I sign me up for for Mike McDaniel finding a way to utilize Odell Beckham the best way possible. And what I'll say this is the last time we saw Odell Beckham go to a creative offensive mind of a similar tree, a guy who Mike McDaniel worked with at one point in time, Sean McVay, he looked pretty damn good down the stretch
That's
for
a
that
great
Super Bowl
point.
run.
Yeah, no, it's so sad he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. He might have been on his way to being the MVP of the Super Bowl. He looked awesome that end of that year and that to start that Super Bowl. So that's a great point. All right, moving on to the mid-price stacks. And so it's going to start with, ironically, for two Washington fans, Dallas is last year and this year is one of our favorite teams to stack up. Well, there's a reason for that. Dak is, a perennial top fantasy quarterback. He's criminally underpriced year after year. He was last year. He's only moved up like 2 rounds this year. Sometimes even just a round, depending on the draft room you're in this year. And to me, that's like just an absolute feel like I'm stealing and getting insane value. So this is an offense that we know is going to be pass heavy from their bye week 7 on. When they came back week 8 on, they were super pass heavy with only having Zeke and Rico Dow. There's no reason to believe they're going to be run heavy or even more balanced. I think they're going to be pass heavy again, likely being a lot of high total games. I just absolutely love this offense. And outside of CeeDee Lamb, you really get everybody else at a pretty good value. If you look at this, they had the 8th highest projected point. They have the 8th highest projected points for 24. They had the most passing touchdowns. Dak had the most passing touchdowns in 2023. He finished as QB3, I believe. The passing game, again, is very affordable outside of CeeDee Lamb going 1 or 2. And then very nice projected point totals in the best ball playoffs, especially week 16 against Tampa and week 17 versus Philly. You and I just did a draft on the Fanspeak Network. Check it out. It's the show before this one, where we did a live BBM and we stacked up Philly and we brought it back with Dallas. So it was a big Philly Dallas stack. And we talked in it that historically these past few years, these Philly Dallas games can really shoot out and have some high totals. So for that to be a week 17 game, I think that's one of the week 17 games that is going under the radar. And I love it. So yeah, we're obsessed. 2 Washington fans, absolutely obsessed with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. What else do you have to add?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that I'll have to add is keep in mind, Dak Prescott, as I said before, he led the league in passing touchdowns last year. He ran for the most yards that he'd run since his knee injury in his major leg injury in 2020. So that was good to see.
Yeah.
And is he the runner that he was very early in his career? No, I don't think he's going to get 6 to 8 touchdowns like he was those years. But if he's getting 300 plus yards, 400 yards, and 1 or 2 touchdowns, that's a good chunk of fantasy. I mean, is it on the level with Lamar and them? No, but you're still getting a good chunk of rushing points to go along with the elite passing points that he brings to the table. And the other side of this is, in 2 ways, the defense really has limited this offense, not just last year, but in recent years. One, they've absolutely shut the door on other teams. So Dak and the starters are sitting after 3 quarters in way too many games. But the other thing is the defense has been so good at getting touchdowns. I mean, how many touchdowns did they get defensive and special teams these last couple of years?
So many, yeah.
Insane number. It's like, I think they've led the league both years in defensive
touchdowns. Yeah.
And they lose their defense coordinator, a number of other defense coaches, and a bunch of defensive pieces. Sure, some of their top defensive pieces are still there,
right?
Like Parsons and et cetera, but they did lose a lot of depth.
They lost the key pieces. Yeah, they lost some key pieces.
So they just might not, it's still probably going to be a top 10 defense, but it might not be as elite. It might not be as opportunistic where they're getting, 6 defensive interceptions returned for a touchdown or whatever it was, and multiple fumble returns and block punts and et cetera, et cetera. So, those types of things, a couple of those, just end up defensive stops or just an interception and a quick turnover and back to the offense. Those could be extra touchdowns for this team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I agree with all. You and I, again, have been in lockstep last year and lockstep this year. We just want a lot of exposure to this offense, again, with or without Dak, but we want a lot of Dak Prescott stacks and in different ways too. So again, if I get Lamb, I'm definitely trying to get Dak Prescott. If I don't, I'm willing to stack at other positions. And so I'm going to have plenty of like Dak Lamb stacks. But if I don't get Lamb and I see Dak fall, I take him. I'll just take him and grab him with Brandon Cooks and Tolbert, or Brandon Cooks and Dow or something like that. I've taken, Ferguson and tried to push Dak to me if I don't get Lamb. I do it in different ways, but you and I know both won a lot of Dak stacks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
which goes well together, the Dak stacks. So anyways, let's move on. Number 16 we are targeting is, and this is in the mid-price area, is the Green Bay Packers, 10th highest projected points for 2024. Jordan Love had the third most touchdown passes in 2023. You're getting a great value on a top offense because the Packers' weapons go anywhere from an ADP of 46 to 152. Jordan Love's current ADP is 94. And this was QB5 last year. Now, obviously, this was a tale of two offenses. It kind of started a little like, ooh, I don't know if Love's the real deal and going to be it. And then in the last third of the season, it was, oh, yes, he is. And it was a top offense. And he really spread it around. The biggest difficulty with the Packers is how many weapons they have. You have Jacobs, and now they drafted, I'm escaping the names. Marshawn Lloyd now, and then they're going to use both of them. You have 4 or 5 receivers if you want to count Bo Melton. I don't think I'm not drafting Bo Melton, but you have 4 legitimate receivers you can draft with him, and 2 tight ends. I've mainly been drafting Luke Musgrave, but he's got a lot of weapons to spread it out to. So it's certainly not a condensed offense, but I'm fine, again, grabbing the pieces I can, whether it's with or without Love, and certainly like getting my Love stacks however I can. That's a nice one. The only receiver that goes ahead of Love is Reed. So even if you miss on Reed, you can still stack Love because he's an easy guy, quarterback to back stack. So your thoughts on the Packers?
Yeah, no, like you said, Jordan Love early in the year, he had a couple good fantasy games because of like a rushing touchdown and whatnot. But overall, this offense did not look good. It looked like the Packers were probably going to be looking quarterback this offseason. But then, right before Thanksgiving game, which was a true national stage breakout, but he had a really good game or two before that. But so, yeah, it was down the stretch. He was just fantastic. And the thing to keep in mind is, while he's been in the league for a while, this was his first year as a starter. He'd gotten a spot start before, but this was his first year as a starter. So it took a little time. And the other part of it was also his weapons were all super young. Both tight ends were rookies last year. Reed, Wicks, Melton, essentially rookies, and then Doubs and Watson were second-year guys, and both of them had missed time as rookies. Watson considerably, and Watson, of course, missed more time in year 2. So that's the thing, is this offense is just going to get better as these guys get more experience. Both Reed and Wicks really impressed, and Wicks especially as a later round guy. Doubs, who is a 4th round guy himself, continues to show he's a good receiver. I mean, I think he's capped in terms of upside, but he's a good, solid starter. And Christian Watson has definitely some big play upside. The health is a concern. I would probably never feel confident just having Christian Watson as my only stacking option with Love. I would probably always use Watson as part of a double stack. But that's kind of the only thing with Love, is you feel almost like you have to double stack, just because if you only take one, it feels like the chance that you guess wrong is high. But if you take 2, then hopefully one of the 2 stacking options is a pretty good call for the year. But no, I think Love is fantastic. And that's the other good news, is similar to what we talked about with some other offenses that have depth, is even if Watson goes down or another key piece goes down, they have depth. This team is not going to crumble just because Love loses a receiver or a tight end. They have depth here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good point. We talked about that with the 49ers and the Dolphins, and it makes sense here too. And the double stack is a good point as well. The other 2, the next 2 I'm going to combine, Steve, because it's really the similar concept, and that's the Atlanta Falcons and New York Jets. The Falcons have the 13 highest projected points for 24. Jets have the 14th highest projected points for 2024. Really, both Falcons is both coaching and personnel. And again, check out Steve's offensive coaching coordinator changes and impact show that we did, another strategy session. But both the Falcons and Jets, everything has to do with the addition of the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers only had 4 snaps with the Jets last year. Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, Kirk Cousins with the Falcons. This is why they're in the top 15 projected points in 2024. They finally give the chance for Drake London and Garrett Wilson to show that they can be the elite receivers that we know they can be. Of course, in the Falcons case, you have Bijan, Pitts, Darnell Mooney later. You have the Zach Robinson coordinator change. With the Jets, you have Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson going earlier, but you have guys like Corley and Conklin that you can stack later with Mike Williams that you can stack later with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to lump these two together because they're really the same. Isn't there a top 10 offense of what a top 10 offenses that I want to stack is for the very same reasons, basically coaching too for Falcons, but really the addition of these two veteran quarterbacks. So I know we're both stacking up the Falcons and Jets a lot. Unfortunately, they do have the same bye week, so you really can't do them together. But I know we're both stacking them up a lot. What are your thoughts on the Falcons Jets?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we know they're two of the most dynamic young running backs in the league in Hall and Bijan Robinson, who, we saw Hall down the stretch last year with terrible quarterback play. Obviously, he might not get as many passes because now they have a quarterback who can throw the ball deep. But just in general, Hall, that should be made up with more scoring opportunities. Yeah. Bijan, Zach Robinson coming from the, Rams offense, which, Sean McVay, we saw how Kyron Williams was used last year. That was pretty good. We also seen how Todd Gurley was used. And of course, the McVay tree is, of course, a branch of the Shanahan tree, and the Shanahan tree has always had good running back play, and most recently with a dynamic dual threat running back in Christian McCaffrey. So these are the offensive minds that you want with these types of weapons. Yeah. For the Falcons, especially. Jets a little bit more worrisome on the coaching front. Nathaniel Hackett, but thing that you will say with Nathaniel Hackett is, of course, it's the Aaron Rodgers show. Yep. Aaron Rodgers fully trusts and believes in him, and that's what you want because Aaron Rodgers is the true field general there. Yep. And I mean, you just saw like the 2 drives in the preseason, the level that he and Garrett Wilson were on last year, and the camp what is the HBO thing?
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks. Thank you. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, and in this thing, Aaron Rodgers is just going to be so upset wanting to come back firing, and they go out and get Mike Williams. Add Corley. Conklin is a good solid tight end. Yeah,
They shored up the offensive line.
And that was the big thing. Yeah. Both free agency and the draft. The Jets' offensive line is going to be a big improvement. Falcons already had a good offensive line, so Cousins gets a big benefit there, something they struggled with in Minnesota the last couple of years. Yeah. I mean, both of these guys could be in really, really prime positions to have these teams as offenses that I know they were ranked, what do you say, 13th and 14th or 12th and 13th, something like that. Easily could be. Yeah,
they're projected 13th and 14th highest totals.
Easily could be top 10, but even pushing top 5. I mean, that's how much upside's there with just the natural talent at the skill guys and what we know that these quarterbacks can do.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's that's why I lumped them together. It's interesting because they both are like so identical from a draft standpoint, right? You both have the elite running backs, dual threat type running backs going in the first round, right around each other in the middle of the first round. You have both those elite receivers that haven't gotten to show it yet because they played with crappy quarterbacks thus far in their career, in Garrett Wilson and Drake London, going at the end of round 1, early round 2. In the case of London, more early round 2, London usually late round 1. Again, the belief in why they're going where they're going is because they're going to finally get to see it with Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers as their quarterbacks respectively. And then Obviously, Pitts is higher tight end capital than Conklin. But yeah, they both have other weapons with Mike Williams, Malachi Corley, Pitts, Mooney. So very interesting. And the fact that the quarterbacks themselves, it's because they're both quarterbacks pop their Achilles and they're coming out. It's very weird. There's so much parallel to this. That's very weird to me. And I'm high. You and I are both high on both these offenses being good. Some people just want to put out the older veterans to pasture, and I'd say not so fast on both these guys.
And just for the obvious, at the time that he got injured last year, Kirk Cousins was QB6 in the league.
Yep.
And that was also with Justin Jefferson having missed a couple weeks.
Yeah.
He's coming, Zach Robinson and Kevin O'Connell, both under Sean McVay. So it's going to be a similar type of offense.
Yeah.
The weapons are going to be very strong like he had in Minnesota. And of course, we know Aaron Rodgers, his last year in Green Bay with those rookie receivers we mentioned, Christian Watson, who was injured, and Romeo Doubs, he didn't have much to work with. They traded away Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Now, he's got an elite receiver again. He was back-to-back MVP in
with Devontae, yeah.
In Devonta. And so, and we know what he can be, easily a top 5, top 6 fantasy quarterback himself, even without any real rushing upside. So
yeah,
sign me up when you're getting them this late.
Yeah, you're getting Kirk Cousins in the 130s, Aaron Rodgers in the 150s.
Yeah.
Both have potential to be certainly a top 10, if not potentially one of them could sneak into the top 5. So, I just think they're both undervalued and we're taking advantage of that. So on to our last few teams here, and that's the cheap stacks, the value stacks, right? And the one, I won't belabor this too much because we have really hammered it in our live drafts. We hammered it on, again, check out Steve's offensive coordinator show. But the Tennessee Titans, everything has to do with these coaching and personnel changes, similar to the Jets and Falcons we just talked about. Everything has to do with coaching personnel changes. You have Brian Callahan coming over from the Bengals as the OC. We know he likes to play fast. He likes to be pass heavy. I think there's every reason to believe he'll do that here. Ridley comes over, could play that chase role. You still have DeAndre Hopkins there. They bring Tony Pollard in. They're setting up Will Levis, to succeed. They use their I believe it was an 8th overall pick on an offensive lineman, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, I believe. And then you're getting all for insanely cheap value. I mean, all the way around, I think every Titans player is priced too low. Is priced too low. That you're getting a good deal on every single Titans player. So I love Titan stacks. I think it's an insane value. By the way, their playoff schedule is pretty good too. So I'm trying to stack up this offense again, with or without Levis, as much as I possibly can. I've gushed about them a ton this offseason on other strategy shows and live drafts. What are your other thoughts?
Yeah, no, it boils down to, Ridley obviously was suspended for a year, and he started off very slow for the Jaguars last year. And so many times he was about half a foot out of bounds for a touchdown or something like that. The reality is, down the stretch, though, he was really good. You look at the second half of the year, he was pretty strong. And, Hopkins also early in the year didn't do much, a little better middle and to the end, some with Levis taking over. But yeah, I mean, that was in an offense that just didn't throw the ball much. As great as Derrick Henry was, taking him out and putting in Pollard and Spears as your 2 backs and just going to a more pass-happy approach, it's just going to be more opportunities for Hopkins and Ridley. I mean, they are not maybe the best 1-2 wide receiver group in the league, but they're a top 10 1-2 wide receiver group in the league. And then you're adding Tyler Boyd, Chigakonkwo, Pollard and Spears out of the backfield. I mean, there's just weapons galore. And they've bolstered the offensive line these last 2 off seasons that it used to be, 2 years ago, probably the worst in the league. Now it has the potential to be pretty solid. And to say nothing about Brian Callahan's dad coming over, Bill Callahan, who is an offensive line guru. So there's just a lot of reasons to be optimistic and positive that this team makes a nice big jump. And while it's probably a stretch that they would end up being a top 10 offense, they're going to be better than what they were last year and could even exceed what they are projected for here, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything comes down to we need this team to stay healthy, and we need Levis to, grow in year two. We need him to obviously thrive in this offense with all the support, good support, amazing supporting cast they put around them. So kind of all comes down to that. If they can stay healthy and if Levis can, develop with all this talent around him, then this is just a smash at this price. So absolutely love the Titan stacks. And then the last one I have is the Chargers. And again, it has a lot to do with the coaching and personnel changes. We talked about it on the offensive coordinator show. Obviously you now have Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. They brought over a lot of, some Ravens running back pieces. And then Herbert lost, some weapons, or a lot of his weapons, obviously his top weapons. But then, they bring over those running backs. They draft Ladd McConkey. So while Herbert is, I think, knocked in drafts because people assume they're going to be run heavy, and they probably will. I mean, they're known, both Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh are known to be run heavy offenses. They could, score more often. It's still Justin Herbert. You're getting Justin Herbert in the 140s. It's just absolutely, again, it feels like the Dak situation and all these other quarterback situations talk about that you're just stealing. You're getting just an elite quarterback in the 140s to get him. He's so often my second quarterback. Last year, you'd be my first quarterback. He's so often my second quarterback in stacks. And, you and I are usually doing 3 quarterback stacks that, whether I'm getting Josh Palmer and Herbert or Ladd McConkey and Herbert, I absolutely love that as a second stack. So to me, it's too cheap. And then again, the running back, no, we don't know who's going to emerge as the top one. I've been taking plenty of Gus Edwards. I do sprinkle in some Kamani Vidal later. I'm too nervous about the J.K. Dobbins running or injury situation, so I haven't really touched him. But how are you handling the Chargers, and what are your thoughts overall to round out our top 10?
Yeah, so as a whole, I agree with you on the Chargers. I think people are taking them way too low. Yes, I think they're going to throw less, but Herbert is shown to be one of the best passers in the league. He has some rushing chops of his own right. He can easily get 300 plus yards rushing. And
you mean he can get 300-yard receipt or passing games?
No, I mean 300 plus yards rushing. Like he's going to add points.
Oh, rushing. 300 yards for the season. Okay,
yeah.
I thought. Okay, I was like, sorry, I had my mind on like a bonus thing, and I was like, wait a second, that's DraftKings, and I got confused.
No,
sorry, my fault.
So he can do more, because that's the thing. Greg Roman has always had rushing quarterbacks.
That's a good
Alex
point.
Smith, Kaepernick, Tyrod Taylor with the Bills. Obviously Lamar with the Ravens. So very run heavy rushing quarterbacks. Herbert is not going to equal any of those guys, even Alex Smith. But what he can do is do more than what he's done. So can add some upside there. But because of that, I do think he's going to throw more. Part of the reason why they are so run heavy is those guys scramble. Herbert won't scramble. He'll throw the ball 60 yards on a rope for a touchdown. My biggest question is, do they have the guys to throw to? I'm fine with Josh Palmer. I really like Ladd McConkey. Big questions on Quentin Johnston, DJ Shark, anyone else. This definitely could be a team that looks to add somebody who gets cut later in the year, or some sort of trade or something like that. We'll see. They don't have much money, so that's a problem. And then the tight end room's a bit of a mess. I wish there was a clear-cut tight end that I could point to and be like, yeah, that's the tight end I'm going to target, because I think it could be a productive position. I really think it could be a productive position. It's just we don't know who it's going to be. I mean, they have Parm, they have Disley, they have Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, I'm sprinkling Hayden Hurst in a couple of these time box contests, because at an 18th round pick, you could do worse.
Yeah. What I will say for the running back is I do feel very confident in Gus Edwards, even if he ends up as the RB2 here, going at the 100 to 115 area. That's fine as an RB2, especially in a team that will run more, and he will likely have the goal line role. Vidal and Dobbins, they could end up being really great values, or they might not play at all. Dobbins due to injury, Vidal because he's just buried on this depth chart. So we'll have to see on that. I'm only sprinkling those guys right now. But I do recommend sprinkling some Dobbins because, again, you're getting him 17th, 18th round. And if for some reason the magic of health appears for J.K. Dobbins, we know he's got the physical talent. We know the coaches love him. Greg Roman has been with him and drafted him. And, even if he ends up as the RB2 to Gus Edwards as the 17th, 18th round, there'll be plenty of work. We saw that in Michigan. Michigan would always use multiple running backs. Harbaugh, that while they love having a featured running back, a second running back will probably get a decent chunk of work as well.
Yeah. No, I agree with all those points. And again, that's why I just think this is a undervalued offense and why I have them as my 10th offense that I am targeting. So, all right. Well, that rounds out the top 10. Again, you can find this all on fanspeak.com. Again, I did an article kind of as a follow-up to this as the teams that pair best together in the fantasy playoffs. And so I talked about these top 10 teams, other playoff teams I like, and then teams that just merge well with them based on the playoff schedules. So this has been fun, Steve. I mean, again, we're stacking up a lot of that top 15 projected points offenses at all different price points and, some other offenses too. But these are our top 10 that we're trying to really, really, really get a lot of access to. Do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No. And, just overall, I think obviously there's other really great offenses, but the point was these are offenses that there's a lot of the guys feel undervalued. And a lot of times it's the quarterbacks who are undervalued.
Yeah.
Like even in like Purdy or Tua or Dak.
These
types
Dak,
of guys.
Herbert, Love. I mean, there's just so many in that we just named about that whole middle range is just loaded.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are the types of offenses that you want, especially if you're going to take multiple pieces. It's one thing if you're going to do a stack and take, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, or you're going to do, some other weaker stack, a Pittsburgh stack or Brown stack, whatever the case may be. But you just don't want to overstack those types of teams. They're not going to likely be a top 10 offense. They're not likely going to be the top 5 offense. But these are the types of offenses where if you get 3-4 pieces, it can absolutely pay off because they can all hit, even at some higher price points.
Right. No, these are all excellent points, and this is fun to talk to because it just helps me as I mean, you and I are both in a lot of slow drafts right now that we loaded up on, the poodles and some of the super flex and all that stuff, and it's a good reminder to keep in mind when you're leaning into different stacks throughout a draft that I want to target top offenses and correlate top offenses. So we hope you guys have found this helpful. Again, if you haven't already, be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the Fanspeak Network, and of course, check out our articles on fanspeak.com. And again, 4 live drafts a week on the Fanspeak Network, more of these strategy shows. We hope you enjoy them all. This has been fun. For Steve, I'm Meg, and we will see you next time.